Picture a man in a tent at the edge of the Roman frontier, with an empire coming apart around him. The year is around 170. There is plague in the camps. A trusted general is preparing to betray him. His own body is frail, and yet this man writes the calmest sentences in the history of private thought. He writes that the only thing he can control is his own judgment. The people who later read those sentences assumed he must have been cold, detached, maybe a little broken. But that is backwards. The calm he was practicing was not the absence of feeling, it was a different way of feeling. That man was Marcus Aurelius, and the private notes he wrote became the meditations. But before we go deeper into his world, we have to face a modern misunderstanding. Most people think a Stoic is someone with a stone face, someone who says nothing bothers them while their jaw is tight, someone who treats emotion as a weakness to be hidden. That is not Stoicism, that is performance. And the performance is exhausting. Real Stoics are not empty. They are, strange as it sounds, happier. The central idea is simple. Most unhappiness comes not from bad events, but from the silent demand that those events must not happen. A delayed flight is annoying. The demand that the flight should have been on time is what turns annoyance into rage. A rejection stings. The demand that the other person should have said yes is what turns a sting into days of self-doubt. The world breaks plans constantly. Real Stoicism trains you to stop demanding that the world obey your plan. Now this sounds like bad advice at first. It sounds like giving up or settling or telling yourself a comfortable lie. But the opposite is true. Stopping the demand is not pretending the bad thing is good. It is not saying the delay is fine, or the rejection is fine, or the pain is not real. It is saying, I did not control that, so I will not let my entire inner life depend on it. The pain can be there. The extra layer of suffering does not have to be. Here is the part most people get wrong. Stoics still feel emotions fully. Sadness still arrives. Anger still flares. Fear still tightens the stomach. The difference is what happens next. An untrained mind takes a feeling and turns it into a permanent story. One rejection becomes the belief that you are unwanted. One mistake becomes the belief that you are incompetent. A real Stoic lets the feeling move through, names it honestly, and then refuses to let it become a fixed verdict. The feeling lasts minutes or hours, not a lifetime. This is possible because of a line that sounds too clean to be useful, but turns out to be the engine of the whole practice. Some things are up to you and some things are not. Your judgments are up to you. Your impulses are up to you. Your desires and aversions are up to you. Your body, your property, your reputation, your job, and what other people think are not up to you. They are shaped by thousands of forces outside your control. Most daily misery comes from spending energy on the second list, while ignoring the first. Think of it as a border. On one side is the tiny territory you actually rule, what you pay attention to, how you interpret an event, what you choose to do next. On the other side is the enormous territory you do not rule, traffic, weather, the economy, other people's moods, illness, memory, time. The fake Stoic pretends the enormous territory does not matter. The real Stoic feels its weight, acknowledges the frustration, and then walks back across the border to the only place where action is possible. Now take a concrete example. You lose your job. The fake Stoic might say, I'm fine, I don't care, nothing gets to me. That is a lie and the body knows it. The real Stoic says, this hurts. I wanted that job, I am scared about money. Then the real Stoic asks a quieter question, what is still mine? Your ability to update a resume, to call a friend, to rest, to learn, to apply again, to be honest with your family. Those are the domain of action. The job itself is not. When you put your energy into what is still yours, the fear does not vanish, but it stops running the whole room. This is not a trick to make pain disappear. It is a mechanism you can watch in real time. Unhappiness is the gap between what you expect and what is. It is not the size of the loss but the size of the demand. Lose a job while believing that you should never lose a job, and the pain has nowhere to go. It turns into shame, resentment, and a story about being worthless. Lose the same job while believing that jobs end, plans change, and your value is not the job, and the pain is still there, but it is a clean wound. It bleeds for a while, then begins to close. Same event, different inner equation. But there is a twist. This does not only apply to disasters. It applies to small daily frictions which in many lives cause more accumulated misery than big losses. Traffic, a delayed plan, an awkward conversation, a social rejection, a missed train. Each one triggers the same silent demand: this should not be happening. A Stoic pauses and says, it is happening. Now what? That pause is not cold. It is a relief. It is the moment you stop arguing with reality and start using reality. Take a smaller version. You say something awkward at a dinner. The words land wrong, you feel the heat rise. The fake Stoic would clamp down and pretend the moment did not happen. The real Stoic feels the embarrassment, lets it be sharp for a few seconds, and then says, the words are already out. My reputation in this moment is not fully mine. What is mine is whether I stay present, whether I recover warmly, whether I learn for next time. That shift does not make the awkwardness fun. It makes the awkwardness finite. Now the question becomes how to train that pause, because no one does it automatically. The ancient Stoics developed repeated exercises, not just ideas. The first is called negative visualization. Before something goes wrong, you imagine it gone or changed, not to depress yourself but to loosen the assumption that it is permanent. Pick up your phone or your keys, picture them lost. Feel the small stab, then notice what would still be true: your hands still work. Your memories are not in the object. Your friendships do not live in the phone. You are not your possessions. The goal is not to wallow in loss. The goal is to stop quietly assuming that all of this is guaranteed. A second practice is the evening review. Before sleep, rewind the day like footage. Find one moment where you were upset. Ask honestly, was the upset caused by the event or by my demand that the event should not have happened? Then ask what a calm person would do with the part that is still up to you. You do not need to fix the day. You just need to see the pattern once. Over weeks, the pattern begins to change because the mind starts to catch the demand before it tightens. A third practice is voluntary discomfort. Once in a while, choose a small discomfort on purpose. Take a cold shower. Eat a plain meal. Walk in the rain without complaining. This is not self-punishment. It is a controlled rehearsal. You are showing yourself that comfort can be removed and you can still be okay. The person who has practiced being cold for 2 minutes is less shattered when the heating fails in winter. The person who has practiced a plain meal is less panicked when the fancy dinner plan collapses. Voluntary discomfort softens real blows. These practices sound simple, but they are not always pleasant. That is the point. Real Stoicism is not a set of quotes for hard times. It is a skill, like strengthening a muscle. The person who only thinks about calm ideas will still fall apart when the car breaks down. The person who rehearses small losses, reviews their demands, and practices discomfort builds a different kind of nervous system. Now return to Marcus Aurelius because his example matters. He was not writing in a library. He was on military campaign near the Danube, managing an empire hit by plague and stretched by war. A trusted general declared himself emperor in the East while Marcus was still alive. Marcus had every excuse to be enraged. He had power, armies, a reputation to defend. Instead, he wrote to himself in private, reminding himself that the people he would meet that day would be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. He was not saying those people were fine. He was preparing his own expectations so he would not be crushed when they acted exactly as people do. The remarkable thing is that he wrote these notes at all. The meditations were never meant for an audience. They are not a polished philosophy book. They are a man coaching himself through real fear, real anger, and real exhaustion. That is why they feel so alive. He did not say, I must feel nothing. He said, I must not let what is outside my control rule the inner citadel. The inner citadel is not a cold fortress. It is a quiet room where you can still breathe. So why does this ancient practice feel so strange to modern ears? Partly because we have confused loud temporary happiness with the steady, low-background contentment that Stoicism actually produces. A new car, a viral post, a big promotion, a first date, a lottery win. These create a spike. The spike is real, but it fades, often within days or weeks. Psychologists call this the pleasure treadmill. You get the reward, you feel a rush, and then your baseline returns. You need a bigger reward next time to get the same rush. That is not a failure. It is just how desire works. Stoicism aims at a different target. It does not reject pleasure. It simply refuses to make pleasure the foundation because pleasure is unstable. Instead, it builds a quiet contentment that comes from having fewer demands and more internal freedom. The difference is visible. Loud happiness looks like fireworks. Steady contentment looks like a lamp that stays on through the night. Fireworks are beautiful, but they do not keep you warm. This may sound modest, but consider what it actually gives you. If your happiness depends on getting the job, the relationship, the approval, the perfect body, the traffic clearing, the weather cooperating, then you are forever negotiating with a world that did not sign the contract. The Stoic withdraws from those negotiations, not because the outcomes are meaningless, but because they are not in your hands. The result is a strange and specific freedom. You can still want things. You can still work hard. But the work is no longer poisoned by the demand that it must produce a particular result. Now here is a practical exercise you can try tonight. Do not wait for a crisis. After you finish watching, take 1 minute before bed. Pick one thing in your life that you rely on and quietly imagine it not being there tomorrow. It could be your phone, your car, your health, a friendship, a job. Let the small stab of loss appear. Then ask, what would still be true? What would still be mine? You are not trying to feel good. You are trying to loosen the grip. That single minute, repeated, begins to change how the next real loss lands. The real loss will still hurt, but it will not also carry the shock that life was supposed to be different. The world will not obey you. People will disappoint you. Plans will break. Your body will fail. That is not a dark truth. It is the oldest truth there is. The mistake is to stake your happiness on those things going your way. Real Stoics are happy not because they have more control over the world, but because they have stopped demanding that the world obey them. They still feel. They still act. They still love. They just stop adding the second pain, the one that comes from insisting that life should have been otherwise. The benefit is not a frozen face or a flat voice. It is freedom. And freedom, in the quietest sense, is what happiness feels like after you stop trying to control the uncontrollable.